Hi everyone, my name is Shazia Khan, and today's unit that we'll be doing is Human Resource Management, and the learning outcome we'll be looking at today is learning outcome 3, which is to examine how external and internal factors influence HRM decision in making in relation to organizational development. So before I go into learning outcome 3, I'm just going to give you an overview of what we did in learning outcome 2. So you've got a bit of an idea. It's a recap on the last session. So in learning outcome 2, we looked at assessing the contribution of HRM in recruiting and retaining talent and skills to achieve business objectives. So we looked at resourcing the organization, we looked at workforce planning and application of data analytics. We looked at assessing skills and capabilities using audits and gap analysis for identifying talent and skills gap. We looked at the elements of end of the road, a roadmap where it's a plan, direction, skills, needs, and skill gaps. So if there's any skill gaps or elements that are around that, so we looked at elements of that. We looked at elements of workforce trends, and we looked at identifying, including like flexible working hours, remote working, virtual working, how that has an impact on elements of distance measures. We looked at addressing diversity and inclusion. We looked at the different types of labour market and skill shortages affecting recruitment and how to fill vacancies. And we looked at lack of digital leadership skills, data analytical skills, impact of relevant legislation, including things like data protection. We looked at recruitment and selection, so the different modes of recruitment and selection. We also looked at the sources of recruitment, internal versus external, and we'll expand more that in learning outcome 3. Achieving cultural diversity in recruitment, stages in recruitment, different types of methods, including competence-based selection, legal frameworks, and regulatory standards. We looked at also at retention, factors influencing retention, including the influence of culture of the organization on retention. We looked at selecting the talent and performance, and we also looked at onboarding and induction. We looked at the role of managers in employment engagement and performance management. We then went on to looking at managing attrition and things like restructuring and redevelopment. We looked at elements of redundancy in regards to employees and dealing with employee disciplinaries and elements of that as well. So we identified lots of different elements in regards to employer engagement, misconduct cases, dismissal cases, things like that. So we dealt with that in learning outcome 3 in regards to that element around issues around, interview and dismissal, things like that. Okay, so that was learning outcome 2. Now we're going on to learning outcome 3, which is looking at elements of examining how internal and external factors can influence HRM decision making in relation to organizational development. So firstly, the unit aim is to analyze internal, external factors that affect the human resource management. It could be, things that influence different strategies. It could be elements of, how both factors influence this thing. So we looked at elements of HR decision making. We're going to look at elements of the issues around complying with legal requirements. And then the indicative content for learning outcome 3 is to look at human resources play an important role in society. We'll be looking at the indicative content for learning outcome 3 in regards to completing learning outcome 3s. We'll be looking at the internal external factors, identifying external factors for HRM, so regulatory frameworks and things like that. We'll be looking at internal factors, external factors, organizational development, and the characteristics of an agile organization and making sure that we are meeting the requirements. So there's a video there that you can look at in your own time. Hi, Keith, are you here? Yeah?
I'm good.
Are you okay? Thank you. And so there's a video there that you could link on in regards to HRM and the impact of HRM. So we'll go into internal and external factors, and that's really important in any organization to make sure that, businesses recruit, people from different roles, both from existing employees that work in the business and then outside the business as well. And these are, you don't always employ people that work in the business. You could look at external organizations as well. So these are referred to as internal recruitment and external recruitment. Internal recruitment usually occurs when an existing employer is seeking a promotion, like if they're working in the same workplace and they want a promotion. Internal and external recruitment may use interviews, application forms. They may use testing, they may be able to, do things like, put in a test, for the aptitude test or test that would amount to trying to find out who's the best candidate for the job. So internal factors affecting decision making. So you could have organizational culture, where the organization defines the values and the beliefs and the norms. Or internal factors could be things like leadership style. If a leadership changes, who's going to be the leader to hire and fire these people as well. So internal factors would be things like that. Business strategy. So sometimes, the business strategy, for instance, if a business focuses on growing, that's a part of it, and focusing on efficiency as well. How does, Keith, when we look at the financial resources, how does that have an affect the HRM decision making? How do you think financial resources affect that?
The business is not able to develop properly, and they're not able to maintain the
Yeah,
facilities.
yeah. What do you think the financial part plays a big role?
Yeah, it's what makes
You can't just recruit
it
people
what
if you don't have,
it stops them.
if you, yeah, the major factor is, things like, you can't recruit people if you don't have the money or the resources in place. So it's so important, that the internal factors have you know, you have to make sure that they have a positive impact on the organization. And the three main ones that I think are things like labor, finance, and technology, and things that have an impact. What about employee relations and morale? Why do you think employee relations and morale is important? Should you have a good relationship with your
Uh,
employees?
yes, it should to help you like work properly.
Yeah. You should have a good relationship with your employees because you should maintain that relationship and that good morale. You should have your turnover should be high. If you have good morale with your staff, your turnover will be high. You will be, working well with your staff. If you don't have a good morale, what are they going to do? Staff are always going to be off sick. So, you need to be having that good morale with them. And then you've got external factors, and we'll go through the external factors, but can you just give me an idea what will impact on HRM decision making in external factors?
Loss in profits.
Yes, yeah. What else? Could it be
Um,
things like social? Could a social and cultural impact have an impact on HRM as well?
yeah,
Yeah. It could be different, it could be different policies, different factors that have it. So economic growth, inflation, unemployment rates, they have an impact on everything, within a workforce. Labor market trends, so changes in labor market such as skill shortages. You may not have anyone that has any skills around HR. So you should put in place training for them. So skills shortages, technological advances. Technological advances can be things like, the fact that there's new technology being introduced, and also the new and another technological factor that's quite a big one at the moment is the use of AI. That has an impact on it. The use of AI within an organization, and that could present any sort of opportunities for human resource management. New technologies require new workers. You have to make sure that your employees are competent with the new technologies that you are introducing, and you are offering them that skill as well. There's no point putting in new technology when you can't have new staff to run that technology. You've got globalization within the workforce, and that could be things like, um, increased workforce diversity, impact on HR practices, the need to adapt cultural diversity into it, make sure you're complying with different laws that are in place, for different countries. Employment legislation, you've got the Employment Rights Act 1996. And that's there to make sure that you are covering elements of you know equal pay. You are treating everyone equally. Legislation plays a big part in HRM, making sure that everyone is treated equally, making sure that the laws are in place, Equality Act, protecting people from the characteristics, protected characteristics, like you can't discriminate against age, disability, sexual orientation, and HR have to implement policies in place. Do you think there's lots of cases of discrimination?
Oh, there is.
Yes. Yes, you are right. Why do you think that's the case?
Because people have different cultures
Yeah.
that they may present in the
Do
workforce,
you
and
think
some
the
people may
do you
not
think the
agree with it.
organizations are following the law properly?
Okay, some of them might,
Yeah.
but I don't think they might be following the law.
Yeah, some of them, you're right, some will, but others won't, and they are breaching things like, we have health and safety in the workplace, making sure, the work that the place that they work is safe for them, making sure that, they provide safe equipment, making sure they are properly trained. Someone can come to work and a new machineries come in place. They need to make sure that they've got procedures in place, because that person can hurt themselves, can't they? If you've got a new machine in place and you come into work and you don't know how to use that machine and you try to use it, if it hurts you, there's a case there. So training need to be put in place as well. And then you've got the working time directive, obviously looks at maximum weekly hours of work and how someone can work more if they choose to, and whether it's complying with the regulations as well. And this was brought in when we were part of the EU. So and we kept this because it's good for the UK laws as well. Then we've got data protection, and this is really important, data protection in regards to elements of people's um, data. Why do you think it's so important when it comes to working in a workplace? Data. Why do you think someone's
To be
personal
able to,
data is so important?
just in case something happens, they have the important information of the emergency contact, where they live,
Yeah,
what are
in
they
case,
allergic to.
yes. Yeah, in case something happens, you have to make sure that, you are looking after the data, because it's a breaching GDPR, and how you use the data, who you give the data to is really, really important. So you should make sure that, you are putting data in place that applies to everyone and making sure you're protecting it. So we've got maintaining good employee relations. So we've got how you would maintain good, policy, maintain this relationship with employees, open communication. Make sure you are, excuse me, make sure you are communicating with your employees. You have this employee relation, which refers to the team and managers and everyone and human resources. but you need to make sure you are maintaining this relationship properly. You know, you are openly communicating with your employees. If you have any issues, any feedback, things like that, you need to be, you know, having this relationship where it's quite open with the employees and make them feel comfortable as well, because, you know, it's important to create this relations policy that sets out what is expected of their behavior. Make sure, you know, you are talking to your employees, consistently being fair and consistent and fair treatment. So you should treat all employees the same, you know, make sure you are treating everyone the same and not having favorites. So, you know, you should make sure you are having a positive working environment. You are treating people equally. You know, it's really important. There's no forms of harassment or discrimination in that place. Um, Employee involvement in decision making. Why do you think it's so important to involve employees in decision making?
Uh, because that's more of a democratic
Yes. Yeah.
way, and
Do
it
you think that
makes
works
employees
when
feel
you're,
like they're involved in the
yes.
business.
Yeah. Do you think it works if you involve the employees? Because employees come up with different ideas, you know, so they can make changes to the workplace, maybe enhance, you know, your employee, get them involved in your decision making. Recognizing and rewarding people, you know, recognition. Why do you think recognition's so good? What
Yeah,
is a good,
to help motivate,
yes, motivation. What we looked at before, you know,
build and
having
create
this
a
employee relationship and motivating them and celebrating their achievements and giving them rewards, you know, to make sure that they've, you know, if they've done something good, make sure you are, you know, working towards giving them rewards and also, you know, gestures as well, employee of the month. This is where people feel appreciated and wanted, and this builds up productivity as well. Support for employee well-being. Now, this is a big part of it. You know, make sure you are promoting a healthy work-life balance. You know, making sure that you know you're not forgetting other areas of the life as well. Make sure that you know there's no tensions between workers, and you know helping employees through challenges and you know well-being. Making sure that you're looking at their well-being, introduce new well-being programs, make sure you are introducing initiatives that you know balance work life, you know, therapy, maybe focus on employee lives and you know maybe achieve their best when they come to work. So make sure that you are putting in well-being sessions in place. Conflict resolution mechanism, you know, managing problems in the workplace that arise, you know, making sure that there's no strain in place, have accessible conflict resolution processes in place, you know, like mediation. If someone raises an issue, follow the procedures that are in place. Make sure you resolve it, but you build this confidence and trust within the employees. Strategies for building and improving employee relation, developing a strong onboarding program. So positive onboarding experience sets out the stage for productive employee relation. Make sure you are building this new onboarding program. Implementing regular feedback and development programs. Why do you think regular feedback is really important?
so that they can be able to improve where they went wrong last,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah, and they can, you know, by having regular feedback sessions, having one-to-one meetings with employees, you know, it's a structured kind of feedback session where the employee is able to, you know, tell you about what's going on, if they need any sort of extra training, and, you know, it boosts this motivation and morale between the organization. Creating employee engagement programs, so making sure you've got like team building activities in place, social events, getting them involved, you know, making this interpersonal connection stronger between employees and having this work ethic as well. Encouraging employee voice and empowerment. Yeah, that's really good. You know, producing survey boxes, producing suggestion boxes, giving them a chance to get their views across because sometimes employers feel like they're not being heard. So making them feel empowered and getting their opinions across as well. Promoting a work-life balance, as we mentioned earlier, you know, it's easy to forget about other areas in your life. Make sure you take the lead and promote this flexible working hours, remote options as well. And the laws have changed on flexible working hours as well now. So more people are allowed to do that. Make sure you provide access to programs and initiatives on well-being or elements of maintaining this healthy work-life balance. Investing in leadership training, so make sure you are externally looking at training courses that would help the employer's skills and effective leaders and build that trust between them, and make sure you foster this employer-employee relationship as well. Offering career development opportunities, and that's things like within internally offer promotions, offer any sort of training, any pathway to leadership programs, or encouraging employees to stay with the company long term. So career development's really good. Recognizing and addressing employee engagement levels. So the fact that, employees are working well, that they are engaging with each other, they're understanding the satisfaction and potential areas of improvement, giving feedback as well. That's really important. So building a strong company culture, and that is really, really important. When you look at and building this culture, you are trying to build the business itself. You are making sure that the employee culture is good. You are working with your employees, you are listening to what your employees are saying, and you are taking on board their comments as well, because that's really important in any organization. And providing competitive benefits, like we mentioned earlier, health insurance and memberships of gyms, childcare, vouchers, making sure they're involved in everything. So employee relations and the law, and why are employment legislations really important when it comes to providing any sort of elements of working at a fair standard? Why do you think employment laws are crucial within the HR department?
To help
Why do you
create
think laws are important
workers,
anyway? Sorry?
create fairness among all workers,
Yes. Yeah, create
equal
this
opportunities.
equal opportunities, that we are providing, elements of equal opportunity. We are treating people fairly, because, sometimes there are cases of discrimination that people are not being treated fairly. So the purpose of employment law is to protect employees' rights, to ensure fairness and equality, as we mentioned, maintain these healthy standards as well. Define responsibilities of the employees, so it will be clearly identified in a contract. Support fair dismissal and redundancy process. So if there's any sort of wrongful dismissal or unfair dismissal, that you have a policy in place that will identify that. So key legal constraints. So, when we look at HR, HR managers can, obviously, the laws include things like protecting people from any elements of discrimination. It covers a wide range of things. It could be benefits of employees. It could be, things like the fact that, they are the company is not complying with the legal obligations. So some equality and anti-discrimination laws in place are things like, equal opportunity. Equality and Anti-Discrimination 2010 looks at the protected characteristics, which are age, gender, race, religion, disability, and sexual orientation, and policies must be put in place for that. Any organization working within any sort of legal contents have to have laws in place that, are making sure that everyone is following the law. You've got data protection, and we looked at that data protection being the fact that, it looks at elements of how individuals' data is being protected and why we need to protect the data. So, you have work, data protection is a really important element and big part of any sort of laws relating to employment law. And then you have employment contracts. Now, the employment contracts include things like, your hours of work, how many hours you work, what benefits you get. So these are really important in regards to elements of employment contracts. Health and safety, as we mentioned earlier, making sure the place is safe, making sure that, there's no any people are trained on new machinery, things like that. Redundancy, another element which is there to protect your employees' position. So if you are made redundant, look, dependent on how long you've been at the organization, there will be redundancy policies in place. Dismissal, so these are things like maybe unfair dismissal, where you've been unfairly dismissed because it may be for some petty reason. It might be the fact that you haven't wore your uniform. It may be the fact that you're dismissing them because you're not following certain procedures. Ethical and social responsibilities in employee relations. So you have fair treatment and respect. So ensuring that everyone is treated fairly and respected, because that's so important, a big element of human resource management as well, and making sure that you are treated fairly as well. Transparency, again, offering communication with company policies, corporate social responsibility, engaging practices, employee well-being, which we looked at in regards to making sure that physical health and supporting employees, and environmental responsibility. Summary table identifies all the elements we've looked at. So we looked at equality and anti-discrimination, data protection and health and safety, what they do, what their description is, what their legal requirements, and the ethical and social responsibilities. And that table identifies that. Trade unions and workplace. Why do you think trade unions are so important?
Experience. I
Sorry?
have no idea.
So trade union, they are an organization that deals with members. So become a member of a trade union, and they usually are workers or employee, and they look at the interest of their at work. So things, it could be like negotiating agreements with employees on pay conditions. It may be discussing big changes to the job, maybe things like redundancy. It may be looking at working conditions. So these are there to protect employees. So the role of trade unions, so they are there to represent and advocate. So they are there but negotiating with employers. Things like, if your wages have gone up, or if wages have not gone up, then they will negotiate wages and things like that. They will also look at collective bargaining, so making sure they're securing things like fair pay, working conditions, any sort of benefits. So they negotiate between employees and employers. And they advise and give legal support as well. They are there to provide any sort of advice on on disciplinaries, disputes, things like that. They're also therefore unions can lobby on policies nationally. So they'll do demonstrations on policies on workers' rights, things like that. So there's agreements put in place, making sure that employers give the employees what they want. Sometimes they come to an agreement together, but they don't, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that they actually debate for. So collective agreements are a contract between the employer and the union that represents a bargaining unit. So they will bargain on areas such as pay, working conditions, benefits, health and safety, job security. Collective agreements are only in effect for a defined period of time. So there are set terms and conditions in place, and what the employer and the employee agree. So discipline, grievances, and redundancy. So discipline, they would have, which we'll go more into later on in learning outcome 4, the ACAS, which is the Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service, and they look at investigating on any forms of discipline. Then grievances, and there's a structured process in place for grievances as well. And this is if there's been any grievances between any sort of manager or worker or anything like that, and these are put into place. Redundancy, again, is a way where they consult with the employees and the employers to make sure that the individual, if they are being made redundant, that there's redundancy pays are in place for them. Trade unions need to negotiate any sort of redundancy packages for the individual rather than just walking away. Summary table, representation, advocacy, and collective bargaining and discipline. We've looked at each element of there. We've looked at the description, the trade union's role, and best practice. So this summary of table you can read in your own time, but it's just literally repeating what we've done. The importance of employee relations in influence HR decisions. So employee relations are key factor in human resources, and they impact on, employee morale, productivity, and all overall performance. And we're looking at some ways in which employee relations influence HR decisions. So again, promoting a positive culture, making sure that, you foster this culture where you are getting employers involved and making them feel valued and accepted. Have you got any questions, Keith?
No.
Okay, so enhancing employee engagement and retention, making sure your employees play a crucial role in employee engagement and retention. So when employees feel they have a voice and they're treated fairly, they will, work well. They will be part of the organization. They will feel the loyalty, the trust, and they will feel part of the company or the organization. So make sure you're enhancing employee engagement. Improving communication, reducing conflicts, creating a channel of where the HR can deal with issues straight away rather than having conflicts in place. Informing HR policies, make sure that employers' relations influence the development of any HR policies. It could be behavior, conflict resolution, and adopting fair policies that employees agree with. Supporting compliance with employment law, making sure you are complying with employment laws. The laws are not something you can just put aside because these are passed by legislation by Parliament. So you need to comply with these laws and make sure that employees are also following the laws as well. Influence in reward and recognition programs. As we mentioned, make sure, you influence any sort of employee relations, in reward packages, vouchers, job satisfaction, gym memberships, anything to influence reward and recognition. If someone's done well, employee of the month, make sure you reward them. Impacting decision making in times of change. So during periods of organizational change, make sure you have the change goes smoothly and make sure you get employees' influence on the support and change of management strategies. Building trust and encouraging innovation. And this is really important part of any sort of working environment. You need to build that trust. You need to make sure that employees feel that they are being trusted and they are feeling comfortable. If any employee wants to share their ideas, make sure you take on board their ideas and encourage that you are listening to them. So in summary, employees influence HR by aligning HR policies, supporting legal compliance, enhancing employee retention, encouraging transparent communication, and shaping reward recognition. Key elements of employment legislation and its impact on HRM. And we've looked a little bit on that a little bit earlier as well. So things like, employment and equality legislation, what the Act does. We'll use a lot of this later on as well, how it impacts on HR, decision making, who you promote, who you hire, who you fire, and make sure you take the legislation into account. Employment contracts and working hours, again, this impacts on having employment contracts in place, what working environments they have, what rest breaks they get, how many holidays they get. Health and safety, again, another really important element, making sure that, you are training people, part of the impact on HR, you are giving regular training, risk assessment all the time, making sure that, departments are putting policies and initiatives in place. Data protection, impact on HR is that, make sure you are implementing data that is, systems that are secure. You are not, letting people look at other people's information. It's so important. Your personal data, make sure that all the data is complying with the laws and are secure. Dismissal and redundancy, that again is looking at unfair dismissal rights, redundancies, and the impact on HR is that they have to follow redundancy policies in place and make sure they are putting notices in place, make sure policies are placed, make sure that everything is a fair process as well. Minimum wage and equality, again, making sure that you are meeting the legal minimum wage requirements and making sure that you're essential to prevent any sort of elements of discrimination. Family leave and flexible working hours. Now, the law recently has said that, there are a lot of changes to flexible working hours which need to be taken in place, making sure that you are taking all the laws into place in regards to flexible working hours, because that's a big increase in that at the moment, and making sure you are taking on employees' working requests, and making sure, you are following the law. Collective bargaining and trade unions, they recognize employees' rights to union representation, and they work with union. HR work with union to negotiate any sort of pays, any sort of agreements with the trade union. So, summary to that, we've looked at the key legislation, the purpose and the impact on HR, things like equality and anti-discrimination laws, Equality Act 2010, Employment Contracts and Working Hours, and Health and Safety at Work Act. The next bit we're going to look at is evaluating key aspects of employee relation management and employer legislation affecting HRM decision making. So employee relations management and adherence employment are central to HR. So any HR managers needs to know the rights of the employees, they need to know the strategic goal of the company, and they need to make sure they're following the legislation. Key aspects of employee relations management affecting HRM decision. Communication and transparency, and that is really important in any organization, in any department. Effective communication is the foundation of having good managers in place, but ensuring that employees are informed, motivated, and involved in the decision making. So you are fostering this positive work culture. Impact on HRM decision making. It needs to have clear channels in place. Transparency is the most important thing when it leads to things like employee engagement, the turnover, the productivity. So make sure you are complying with the policies that are put in place. Employer engagement and motivation. Making sure employees are motivated, making sure employees are motivated, work well, productivity, performance, everything is influenced by employer, working well. And to support engagement, HR implement things like reward systems, as we mentioned, provide rewards, provide any sort of elements of how they've performed well. Conflict resolution, again, HR needs to have policies in place to make sure that conflict resolution is put in place, and it reduces any sort of legal risks and enhances the company reputation. Someone who's put in a grievance, you need to make sure you are following the concerns of that employee and making sure you are putting them first as well. Work-life balance, again, HR need to take into consideration if you have a work-life balance, if you have kids at home, if you're a carer, these kind of things need to be taken into account. If you want to work remote, that should be accepted, flexible working hours. So work-life balance needs to be taken into account as well. Any questions on that, Keith?
No question.
Okay. So key aspects of employment legislation, and you'll do a little bit more of this in Learning Outcome 4 as well. So this looks at equality and anti-discrimination, which we went through. The impact on HRM is that they must follow the laws in place. They must follow this, the legislation and what the government have passed. And, they must have this, foster this inclusive culture within the workplace so that they don't get fined or, any sort of cases against them. Health and safety, again, is making sure the workplace is safe, and policies need to be put in place. So if anything, making sure HR will put policies in place and train people as well. Employment and working contracts, as we mentioned, HR needs to put a legal contract together which looks at the working hours and rest breaks and contract times, and making sure that they are complying with the law. Data protection, as we mentioned, making sure that protection of the data is on secure system. Dismissal and redundancy, that policies are put in place on dismissal and redundancy, and everything is quite transparent. Evaluation summary. So in an organizational context, both employees, relations and positive legislation play a critical role within HRM, making sure that employees have a positive employment element in place, improve productivity, improves this trust. You know, employment law is really important when it comes to issues, like we said, mentioning earlier, equality, you know, health and safety, contracts of employment, making sure you are following the legislation that has been passed, making sure that they ensure that policies are put in place for, you know, having a safe working environment and building this culture, trust culture. Organization development in a changing working environment. So organization development is a continuous systematic approach aimed at, you know, making sure that policies are put in place, everything internal and external changes are met. As you know, the working environment, technology is changing all the time. The laws are changing all the time to protect, you know, and anyone in regards to changing working hours and things like that. The need for flexible organization. So making sure that you are adapting and responding to market changes. So market changes that are put in place, make sure you are following the trends. Because, you know, most organizations still have people that work from home, you know, remote working, and jobs are being advertised nowadays after the pandemic of remote working. So make sure you are responding to any changes. Restructuring and adaptable workforce models. So make sure you are putting workforce models into place and collaborating with them and making sure you are fostering an innovation and collaborative kind of culture within your organization. Embracing remote and hybrid work. And this is something after COVID. Some organizations do it at home. Some organizations don't want to do hybrid working. Why do you think, Keith, that some organizations don't want to embrace remote and hybrid working?
Because
Do some organizations
the
just
business
want
of,
to have their employees at work all day?
sorry?
Do some organizations always want their employees at work all day?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't always work, does it?
No, it doesn't. The
No. And also, you know, fitting into this
employees
remote and
get
hybrid,
tired, it lost the productivity.
yes. And it also helps, you know, with people with children as well, you know, taking their lifestyle into consideration. So number two, the need for employees with adaptable skills and competence. So there's a demand for, you know, digital skills, making sure that everyone is trained, that employers are now looking at analytical skills with the introduction of AI and things like that. Soft skills and emotional skills, making sure, you know, the increasing organizations value soft skills like communication, empathy, you know, making sure that everyone is working as part of a team and feeling wanted. Adaptability and learning agility. So make sure, as we say, new things are coming into places. Make sure that employees are adapted to these new elements of things that are coming into places, and training is provided. Project management and cross-functional skills. So as an organization, employees are expected to manage projects, lead teams, skills in project leadership. Make sure you have this diverse culture and make sure you know you get these skills in place for that employee. So in summary, in this rapid growing working environment, organizational development strategy is really important because there's new challenges, new changes coming into place, and fostering that culture of you know, continuous learning is really good because it thrives, you know, the certain employees, but has this element of, you know, where companies will remain competitive, and there's that trust element as well. Characteristics of agile organizations. So agile organizations are structured to respond swiftly to changes in the market and external environment. They prioritize flexibility, innovation, and continuous improvement. Customer-centric approach is where the agile organization puts customers' need at the center of the decision making. So anything that elements that happen there. Cross collaboration teams, functional teams, adopt this flat structure on cross-functional teams. So this brings together diverse and skills, enabling to try, you know, get creativity in place. Adaptable as decentralized decision making. So in regards to that, you've got things like, the element of making decisions quickly without a hierarchy in place. Sometimes, having a hierarchy in place doesn't help. People, if a manager works at a similar level to the employer, then the employer feels more content and has this culture, where the manager is helping out as well. So we should, work well. Focus on innovation and continuous improvement. And that could be things like about products, continuous improving the product, encouraging new ideas, focusing on new processes, making sure that, new things have been put in place to make that person feel more welcome, ensuring they are aligning with customer needs as well. Flexibility and scalability, so are structured to high flexible and scalable, so changes in demand, quickly relocating, allocating resources, data-driven decision making, so making sure that, the data approach enables them to respond more accurately, so looking at data, analyzing these things. Digital transformation of HR. Why do you think digital transformation has an impact on a lot of organizational elements?
Uh,
The introduction
it
of
helps.
digitalization.
It increases productivity.
Yeah,
It's more accurate than it
yeah,
reduces human error.
yeah. It's, it could be data digitalization could work well for some organization, but, for others, it may not work well. A HR digital transformation is an ongoing and dynamic process that involves like the integration of digital technologies into various aspects of, HR management to enhance things like efficiency, effectiveness, and the overall, employee experience. So reporting dashboards and predictive models for people's analyticals. So the impact is that dashboards and predictive analyticals help HR make proactive decisions. Predictive analytics can help identify any sort of trends, employment trends, any sort of performance issues, and it's just strategic decision that HR make because it works well for them and to improve their business objectives. Artificial intelligence, AI. How do you think AI has an impact? AI is a growing thing at the moment, isn't it? Do you think AI is growing, getting even more, is growing too quick?
It's very too good.
Yeah, I
Um,
think AI is growing really, really quick, and the recruit could take the board of the recruitment process, sourcing, screening people. I personally don't agree with AI, but that's people and organizations prefer to use it, and it could be for used in HRM, and it could speed up things for them, and it could be looking at development training, delivering, learning and development programs. It could be the fact that, how it may replace people as well, that looks like the future of AI. Cloud capabilities for measuring team performance and collaboration. So cloud-based HR platforms enable organizations to track and evaluate team performance. And it has an impact because, HR and making sure that data is backed up, making sure that, data sharing across teams is transparent, people are well informed, and, there's collaboration with team members and other managers because, to make sure that this the cloud capabilities actually work for them. People analyticals and employee engagement. So people analytics powered by digital tools to collect and analyze data. Why is it so important to collect and analyze data for HR?
Reduce turnover.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it also because, it provides this element of, different factors of employment engagement, make it looking at improving retention and satisfaction, making sure looking at resource allocation, making sure that, you know, they look at development programs and, you know, making sure that it's more proactive.
Yeah.
Automated learning and development platforms, and they're important in regards to making sure that employees are trained. Why is it important for employees to have training?
So that they can be able to work with the machineries properly,
Yeah. If it is machinery
to
and they're
appreciate
able to
them.
work in that industry, make sure that they are, you know, working with the right elements in place, you know, making sure that, you know, the training is put in place for that person, you know, improving any sort of elements of complying with training, making sure that they're offering, you know, employee growth, lifelong learning, CPD, employee development, making sure that there's elements of tracking any sort of training programs based on performance. So in summary, the digital transformation of HR enables agile organizational to look at real life data and use that to allow, you know, scalability and make sure that it focuses on delivering this value in changing environment, making sure that employees are equipped and we are meeting the needs and engagement of that employee. So strengths and weaknesses of HRM practices uh, and recommendations for improving sustainable performance. So strengths of HRM practices around recruitment retention help organizations attract people from different skills, high performing employees, you know, making sure that they build and maintain a talented workforce. The recommendation is to strengthen talent acquisition, implement AI-driven recruitment selection, investing in, you know, more sustainable growth, making sure that, you know, you are taking onboarding programs for employees. Learning and development, again, learning and development is really important, you know, making sure that everyone has the right skill set, making sure you are increasing job satisfaction and reducing turnover, that the skills align with their job as well, making sure that you send people out on the right training courses, you know, that align with their job, making sure that, you know, you are building up their skills and making sure there's a track record of all this so that, you know, there's any sort of future ready workforce, they call it, to base any sustainability. Next one, performance management and feedback. Always so important to have regular appraisals and feedback to encourage any sort of employees. Organizational objectives are being met, you know, making sure that employees constructive feedback is given, you know, and feedback is really important for any organization because, you know, you're able to track the goals and skill development. If there's not enough training in this, you know, it offers and encourages that ongoing improvement and alignment with organizational goals, helping create this kind of culture of growth and sustainability and productivity, and making sure that it's enhancing any sort of elements of employee engagement and productivity. Diversity and inclusion, another really, really important element of HRM, making sure you are promoting diversity and inclusion within the workplace and fostering this culture, making sure that people understand diverse markets. You know, you are employing people, and recommendation is you need to strengthen your diversity and inclusion policies and programs in place, making sure you are implementing bias reduction training, establishing this employer resource groups, empowering different groups, regular monitoring and long-term commitment to inclusivity, you know, make sure if an organization works within this inclusive diversity inclusive programs, they are going to be more sustainable. That organization is going to have a better position. That organization is going to work well with its employees. That organization is going to have a good reputation for doing this. You know, so this work ethic and this collaboration of diversity and inclusion is really important within a workplace. Weaknesses of HRM. So weaknesses, traditional performance appraisals conducted annually or semi-annually can lead to bias evaluations. So this inconsistency can demotivate employees and hinder the organization's performance. A recommendation is to adopt a frequent data-driven appraisal system using digital tools that track you know, employees' progress in real life. So make your self-assessment, you know, peer reviews, fairer evaluations, enhancing any sort of employee motivation. You okay, Keith? Any questions?
No question.
Okay, thank you. So limited use of advances, people analytical. So many HR departments lack sophisticated analytical capability, data-driven decisions. HR may struggle to identify patterns and focus workforce. So invest in advanced people analytical tools and predictive models as well. Training HR professionals in data analysis enables better decision making. Summary of a table. This table identifies elements of what we've looked at in HRM practices. So strengths and weaknesses in talent acquisition and retention, and the recommendation, what they should do. In learning and development, the strength, weaknesses, and then what is recommended, things like using personalized digital platforms. For performance management, strength, shift to continuous feedback models with real-time tracking, making sure that you are shifting away from that. And for diversity and inclusion, again, set a strength and then set measurable goals, provide bias reduction training, and establish, ERGs to foster this inclusive culture. Make sure your organization is inclusive and diverse, and make sure you are bringing in different programs in place. Employee well-being, expand in well-being initiatives, flexible working hours, make sure you are supporting work-life balance, and then performance, making sure that you implement driven appraisals. The use of people analytics, invest in people analytics tools and train HR in data analysis. And career development, create a career progression framework and promote any sort of internal promotion within the organization. Employee relations management, so adopt proactive employee relations management with regular engagement. Digital integration, invest in cloud-based HR systems to streamline, making sure that is transparency and improved responsiveness. So in conclusion to that, to support sustainable organization performance, HR departments should leverage their strengths in talent acquisition, learning and development, employee well-being, while addressing weaknesses in performance by appraisal, consistency, career development, and digital integration. And by implementing these recommendations, HR can, have more job satisfaction. They're aligning with strategies, they're following the laws, they're fostering this culture of adaptability and diversity and inclusion, and they're improving their organizational performance, employee retention, and overall the business is, is better. There's an impact, in regards to that on different factors that need to be taken in place to make sure this overall business success is really good, making sure that they've got an overall business success. So we've finished learning outcome 3 now. I'll just give you a quick recap of what we've done in learning outcome 3. So we mainly looked at influencing HRM decisions in making relation to organizational development. We looked at external and internal factors, and we looked at including skill gaps and labour force trends. We looked at the impact of globalization on HR policies for equality, diversity, inclusion, raising this cultural awareness. We looked at sustainable organizational performance and made recommendations on weaknesses and strengths. We looked at the impact of legal and regulatory frameworks on HRM. These were external factors. We also looked at internal factors, which were things like leadership styles, transformation, culture, employee experience. We also looked at learning and development and how this will impact on individuals and digital learning. That's such a big transformation. We looked at the relationship between organizational culture and strategic planning, and motivation and performance as well. We looked at the changing environment, things like flexible working hours, making sure that, we are meeting the requirements of the legal requirements. We looked at the laws, Equal Pay Act. We looked at elements of redundancy, unfair dismissal. We looked at the characteristics of an agile organization, We also, in learning outcome 3, looked, which we've done today, is digital transformation, reporting dashboards, and we looked at people analyticals, artificial intelligence, which is AI, for talent acquisitions. We looked at cloud capabilities for measuring team performance, and also collaboration decision making in regards to that. So we looked at quite a wide area in learning outcome on elements of, you know, what influences HRM decision in relation to organizational development, a lot of the laws that change it, digitalization, transformation of new ideas and things like that. So I'm bringing in, you know, employees, making sure that we have forums and feedback groups in place. So these are some of the resources used today in today's session in learning outcome 3, and some refer to ebooks and any further reading on additional reading on Moodle that you can refer to that will help you in regards to any elements of trying to do the assignment when it comes to it. If you have any questions, Keith, do you have any questions about learning outcome today's session? Any questions, Keith? No? Okay.
No.
No, thank you. Thank you, Keith, for attending today's session. If you have any questions or anything, email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. Submission of the assignment to be done on learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. And that's 2 weeks after the completion of the unit and the assignment discussion. So the next session we've got is tomorrow, and that is the session around learning outcome 4, okay, and that is looking at applying HRM practices in work-related contexts for improving sustainable and organizational performance. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow, okay? So it's 9 o'clock tomorrow. If you haven't got any questions, Keith, thank you for attending today's session, and I will see you tomorrow. Is that okay, Keith?
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.